In today's video, I want to talk to you about how I designed this quilt and how I stayed organized while making it. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and I want to talk about this quilt that you see, which is called Starburst, and I designed and made this quilt as an Island Batik Ambassador. So this was the November 2025 challenge. It was called Timeless Traditions, and we had to use at least 5 out of a possible 10 quilt blocks. So they suggested the blocks for us, and I think I did pretty good because I actually used 6 of the blocks. And of course, I was using a brand new Island Batik of Lumen Fabrics collection called Under the Sea, and I wanted to use as many fabrics from that fabric collection as possible. I think I did pretty good because I used all of them, and I believe there was 20 different fabrics in that collection. So I managed to get them all into Starburst. Now let's talk about the different blocks that I used. So, half square triangles in the cornerstones. This is a 9-patch chain, flying geese in a couple different sizes. I have a friendship star over here, variable star in the center, some 4-patch units here as well. I think that's 6. So those are the ones I decided to use. And then of course I had to, create this sampler layout, which is interesting, shall we say. It can take a little bit of work. So of course I went to Electric Quilt to do this. So I did some different mock-ups to see, how things would work and what blocks I wanted to put where to create this sampler quilt. And of course, another challenge is that I'm trying to use all those fabrics in the collection, and contrast becomes critical in some of these blocks. So for example, in the variable star in the center, you want to make sure that it looks like a star. So I wanted to make sure that the fabric I chose for those points was a real contrast. I mean, it's a contrast in color to these other fabrics, but it's also a contrast in the value of that fabric. It's a very dark value, so it really shows as a star when you make that block. Same thing with the flying geese. You need to have that contrast between the background and the geese themselves. So that was something else that took me a little while to work with. The nice thing about Electric Quilt is that I can actually scan and import the images of the fabrics, so it really gives me a good idea. I mean, it's not perfect, but it gives me a good idea, and certainly gives me the idea of whether or not that contrast is sufficient, so that when I go to make the block, I'm confident it's going to turn out the way I want it to. Now, working with all these different pieces of fabric and all these different fabrics can be really challenging, and it's really easy to get confused. Ask me how I know. So to keep myself organized, I did a couple of things. So first off, mocking up an EQ8 helps because it will give me yardage estimates. So that is really helpful. Again, when I'm working with a collection, I am limited to only so much fabric only so much yardage, I should say, of each fabric. So again, when I was designing, I wanted to make sure that if I create a certain layout, that I had enough of all of the fabrics to make it. And sometimes that was an issue, so back to the drawing board, right? So that's one thing. Using Electric Quilt helped. Also, when I was doing this, I'm working with all these different fabrics. Some of them are in more than one block. Most of them probably are more than one block. Really easy to get confused as to what sizes to cut. So I started off block by block, the different pieces that I would need to cut from which fabrics for each of the blocks. And I actually created that in an Excel spreadsheet. So I did a spreadsheet block by block. Then I went through it and I accumulated all the different pieces from one fabric. So for example, if I was looking at, let's say, this fabric here, which I see in my flying geese, and they're 2 different sizes, I would have another Excel spreadsheet that had that fabric and would tell me all the different pieces to cut, because I don't want to just be cutting individual little pieces, right? I want to be cutting a width of fabric strip and then subcutting as much as possible. I want to be efficient in my fabric usage, right? So I did that, and that was super helpful to keep me organized. When I do those, I print them out. Yes, I kind of go old school. I don't just go digital. I print them out and I check them off as I go along, as I cut, so I make sure I don't miss anything. So that was really helpful. Then, of course, once the fabric is all cut, I've got all these different pieces. What block does it go with? Well, I like to label my fabrics. And to do that, again, going old school, I just take a Post-it note and I pin it. So I might have, block 1, flying geese background, for example, and I would just pin that to the fabric. So I'm going to have a little pile of fabric. I pin that to it so I know when I go to do block 1, I just gather those all together and I know I have all my pieces and I can start constructing the block. So when I'm working with a project like this, staying organized is critical, and these are some of the steps that I used to do so. Now, before I talk more about this project, I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patchwork Pals. Those are quilters who are in my Patchwork Pals membership. That's a YouTube channel membership. And you get extra perks, you get early access to my videos and lots of other fun perks if you're a Patchwork Pal member. So if you're interested in joining us and supporting my channel, just look below any of my videos. You'll see a join button and you can just click on that and it gives you all the information and you can become a Patchwork Pal today. Now, I learn something new with every quilt I make. You're probably the same. And one of the things I learned when I was doing this, and I know this, but for some reason didn't apply it initially, is that when I'm working with a block, I need to know how many units make up that block. So for example, looking at the variable star in the center, this is made of 4 different pieces. Okay, it's 4 this way, 4 down this way. I know it looks like kind of 3, but these flying geese are actually 2 units, all right, when you're talking about construction. So when I'm working with a block like this that has 4 units in it, it will fit into a 4-inch block, an 8-inch block, a 12-inch block, multiples of 4. What it doesn't fit into very well is a 10-inch block, for example. So you can make it into a 10-inch block, but you're going to be working with like 1/8 inches and stuff, and I don't like to go below 1/4 because your accuracy starts to get off and things don't always turn out quite as well as you'd hoped. So that was one of the things I had to work with. It actually happened to me when I was working with the flying geese of all blocks, and I was trying to put it into a size that just was not going to work for, you know, a flying geese that has 4 different parts to it. So that is one thing to keep an eye out for. If you're working with a sampler quilt like this and you're trying to put different blocks into certain sizes, this is actually a 12-inch block, so it worked out fine. You know, you want to be aware of what is that particular block you're working with, what units are in there. Is it 4-unit block? Is it a 3-unit block? What is it? And make sure that the space you're putting it into is going to work and make your cutting easier for that block. Now you notice probably that this quilt is not yet quilted, and that's because there's a lot going on in it and I haven't yet decided exactly how I want to quilt it. I do think I want to do some ruler quilting in this, but I'm still thinking about some of the areas. And of course we have these big areas like here and here, here, which is just solid fabric. And so, you know, ruler quilting look really nice in there. But I'm wondering, what suggestions would you have for quilting a project like this? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to leave a comment below and let me know how you would approach quilting a project like this. Thanks so much for watching today. And while I've talked about this particular project, you might be wondering about some of the other projects I made for Island Batik as an Island Batik Ambassador. Well, don't worry, I got you covered. Check out this video that has more helpful information for you. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.